Hello and welcome to another session in our teaching series Hidden Facts in Biology. In this video, we are going to be talking about nervous coordination, and under that, we'll be looking at the peripheral nervous system. By way of introduction, the peripheral nervous system includes all nerves outside the brain and spinal cord. Remember, we said the nerves in the brain and spinal cord makes up the central nervous system. This peripheral nervous system they consist of sensory nerves which leads from all parts of the body to the central nervous system, and the motor nerves also running from the central nervous system to all parts of the body. There are two types of peripheral nerves, and these are the spinal nerves and the cranial nerves. The spinal nerves, these are nerves which are connected to the spinal cord. The spinal nerve serves the receptors and effectors in other body parts, while the cranial nerves are nerves that are connected to the brain. The cranial nerves are associated mainly with the receptors and effectors in the head. The peripheral nervous system can broadly be classified into two. In other words, there are two types of peripheral nervous system, and these are the somatic nervous system and the autonomic nervous system. First of all, we'll look at the somatic nervous system. The somatic nervous system primarily senses the external environment and controls voluntary activities in which decision and commands come from the cerebral cortex of the brain. What this somatic nervous system deals with are mainly external stimuli and their responses. The somatic nervous system is made up of 12 pairs of cranial nerves which are located in the head and 31 pairs of spinal nerves located in the body of man. And of these 12 cranial nerves, the optic nerve, which is responsible for vision, and olfactory nerves responsible for smell, consist only of sensory fibers. The remaining 10 pairs of the cranial nerves and 31 pairs of the spinal nerves contain both sensory and motor nerve fibers, and these fibers conduct impulses from sense receptors to the spinal cord or brain, and from there to effectors. The autonomic nervous system, on the other hand, is the part of the peripheral nervous system that controls involuntary actions such as the rate of heartbeat, breathing, digestion, sweating, etc. inside the body. This system consists of sensory and motor nerves which connect the brain or the spinal cord to internal organs such as heart, liver, and alimentary canal. The autonomic nervous system consists of two parts, and these are the sympathetic nervous system and the parasympathetic nervous system. Let's talk firstly about the sympathetic nervous system. The sympathetic nervous system consists of nerves which connect internal organs to the thoracic and lumbar areas of the spinal cord. It stimulates many parts of the body for necessary action in time of danger, and during this process, a hormone, adrenaline, may be released. What are the functions of the sympathetic nervous system? The functions of the sympathetic nervous system are listed below. Number one, it accelerates the heartbeat. In other words, it increases the heartbeat. Number two, it slows gut movement. When we talk about gut movement, we are talking about the movement of the gastrointestinal system. That is the movement of food around the stomach and intestine. Number three, it raises the blood pressure. Number four, it inhibits the secretion of salivary glands. Number five, it constricts arteries. By constriction of arteries, we are talking about reduction in size of the arteries. Number six, it dilates the iris. That is, it widens the iris. Number seven, it dilates the bronchioles. Remember, the bronchioles are responsible for respiration. That is, it widens it. Number eight, it causes the relaxation of bladder muscles. And number nine, it contrasts the bladder and inner sphincters. Having looked at the function of the sympathetic nervous system, let's now talk about the parasympathetic nervous system. The parasympathetic nervous system consists of nerves that connect internal organs to the 10th cranial nerve and the sacral region of the spinal cord. This system stimulates the same organs as the sympathetic nervous system, but the action that is being produced is opposite to the sympathetic nervous system. So now let's look at the functions of the parasympathetic nervous system. The functions of the parasympathetic nervous system will be opposite to that of the sympathetic nervous system. Whereas in the sympathetic nervous system, we have that there is an acceleration of the heartbeat. In the parasympathetic nervous system, the heartbeat is going to be slowed down. That is, it slows down heartbeat. And unlike the sympathetic nervous system that slows gut movement, the parasympathetic nervous system will speed up gut movement. In the sympathetic nervous system, we see that it raises the blood pressure, but in the parasympathetic nervous system, there will be lowering of the blood pressure. Unlike the sympathetic nervous system that inhibits the secretion of salivary glands also, since it is an opposite action, the parasympathetic nervous system will stimulate the secretion of salivary glands. The parasympathetic nervous system dilates arteries, and this is unlike the sympathetic that constricts arteries. Also, in the parasympathetic nervous system, there is a constriction of iris, which is also in direct opposite of the sympathetic nervous system that is responsible for dilating the iris. In the parasympathetic nervous system, the bronchioles are constricted. That is, it constricts the bronchioles. But in the sympathetic, the bronchioles dilate. The parasympathetic nervous system causes the contraction of the bladder muscles, which is also in opposite to that of the sympathetic nervous system that causes the relaxation of the bladder muscle. And lastly, the parasympathetic nervous system relaxes the bladder and inner sphincter, which is unlike the sympathetic nervous system that contrasts the bladder and inner sphincter. So this is all about the function of the parasympathetic nervous system. Now we'll look at a diagram that broadly illustrates these differences. In this diagram, we see the differences of the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. On the left side, we see the parasympathetic nervous system, and on the right side, we see the sympathetic nervous system. Remember, we said the parasympathetic nervous system consists of nerve that arises from the 10th cranial nerve and the sacral region of the spinal cord. So those are the nerves there. And of this nerve, we see their actions in different organs of the body. First of all, let's talk about the action of the parasympathetic nervous system. In the eyes, we see that the parasympathetic nervous system constricts the pupil. Then we'll go to that of the sympathetic nervous system in the pupil also. Then we'll see that it dilates the pupil, which are opposite actions. Now, going to the tongue or to the mouth, we see that parasympathetic nervous system stimulates the flow of saliva, while the sympathetic inhibits the flow of saliva. Also, in the heart, parasympathetic slows heartbeat, while the sympathetic accelerates the heartbeat or increases the heartbeat. In the lungs, the parasympathetic constricts the bronchi, while for the sympathetic, there is a dilation of the bronchi. Now, going to the gastrointestinal system, the parasympathetic stimulates peristalsis and secretions. Peristalsis is the movement of food content down the gastrointestinal tract, while for the sympathetic, it inhibits peristalsis and secretion. Now, going to the liver and the gallbladder. For the liver and the gallbladder, the parasympathetic stimulates the release of bile, while for the sympathetic, it increases the conversion of glycogen to glucose in the liver. Now, going to the bladder, the parasympathetic contracts the bladder, while the sympathetic inhibits bladder contraction. This is all what this diagram illustrates: the functions and the differences of both the parasympathetic and the sympathetic nervous system. Having said this, now we are going to be talking about the differences between the somatic and the autonomic nervous system. So differences between somatic nervous system and autonomic nervous system. On the left, we have the somatic nervous system, and on the right, we have the autonomic nervous system. The first difference is that the somatic nervous system affects skeletal muscles. It's responsible for effective changes in skeletal muscles, while the autonomic nervous system affects glands, cardiac muscles, and smooth muscles. Another difference is that the somatic nervous system body activities are mainly voluntary, while in the autonomic nervous system activities are mainly involuntary. That is, they are not under control. Another difference is that the somatic nervous system always stimulates effectors, while in the autonomic nervous system there might either be stimulation or inhibition of effectors. We have come to the end of the teaching session. Now let's take a look at some examples. First example says the nerves that arise from the brain are known as A. Spinal nerves, B. Sacral nerves, C. Cranial nerves, D. Optic nerves. The answer to this question is C, because the nerves that arise from the brain are called cranial nerves. Those that arise from the spinal cord actually are called spinal nerves. The sacral nerves arise from the sacrum, while optic nerves is the nerve that supplies the eye. Now to the next question. It says the following are functions of sympathetic nervous system except A. Dilation of pupil of eye, B. Inhibition of salivary secretion, C. Reduction of blood pressure, D. Reduction of urine output, E. Stimulation of ejaculation. Before we answer this question, let's take a brief look at the function of the sympathetic nervous system. The function of the sympathetic nervous system include the following: it accelerates the heartbeat, it slows gut movements, it raises the blood pressure. The sympathetic nervous system inhibits the secretion of salivary glands, it constricts the artery, it dilates the iris and also dilates the pupil, it dilates the bronchioles, it causes the relaxation of the bladder muscles, and it contracts the bladder and anal sphincter. From the recap we just did on the function of the sympathetic nervous system, you will see that the option that is wrong here is C, which is the reduction of blood pressure. And that is because the sympathetic nervous system actually raises the blood pressure and doesn't reduce it. So our next question, it says the autonomic nervous system comprises of A. Sympathetic and parasympathetic, B. Cranial and sacral nerves, C. Brain and cranial nerves, D. Spinal cord and spinal nerves. The answer to this question is A. The autonomic nervous system actually comprises the sympathetic and the parasympathetic nervous system. So the next question, it says the autonomic nervous system consists of neurons that controls the A. Voluntary muscles, B. Heartbeat, C. Tongue, D. Hands. From our teaching, we made mention of the fact that the autonomic nervous system controls involuntary actions, while the somatic nervous system controls voluntary actions. So the answer to this question will be B, heartbeat, since heartbeat is an involuntary action. We have come to the end of the examples. Now we are going to be taking some exercises. These exercises, they were gotten from our book, Hidden Facts in Biology. You can see it in page 215. You can try your hands on them and get either the soft copy or hard copies to check if your answers are correct. Thank you for listening.